Ms. Nandita Ghadge. An alumnus of Sir J. School of Arts, Mumbai, Nandita Ghadge has worked on a plethora of projects including MNCs like De Beers and British Diamond Trading Corporation. One of the founding partners of Kaggle Craft, Nandita has also worked on restoration projects in Baroda. She has also collaborated with a South African architect for an international assignment based in South Africa. Today, Nandita Ghadge will be speaking on traditional fenestration in ancient Indian architecture. So let's welcome Ms. Nandita Ghadge.
So I'm going to talk about traditional fenestration in ancient Indian architecture. And of course, it's a vast subject, so I'm just going to try and touch on some points. Basically, as we all know, human skull has a few holes. And while the skull is heavy, the holes make it lighter and without compromising on its strength. These holes are called fenestrae in Latin, which means windows. So similarly, a building needs these fenestrations for it to be lightweight without compromising on its strength. So fenestration is anything that allows passage from outside to inside, be it light, wind, and human beings. I start with a quote by the famous Louis Kahn, which he says that the sun does not realize how wonderful it is until after a room is made. It is with great difficulty that the ancient builders could include as many fenestrations as if it was not calculated well, it could weaken the structure. Now with steel structures and frames, the weight is distributed evenly. Hence, the modern architects have much more scope using big windows and other large openings. Now let us talk about some of the exquisite fenestration designs and forms that we have in ancient India. And the first form that comes to me is the magnificent Gopuram. It has a plethora of, lots of sculptures and carvings, painted themes from Hindu mythology. And they were the first form of fenestrations, which was letting in the devotees into the inner courtyard of the temple. These started, I think, from the Pallava dynasty to Vijayanagar and spread to Khmer to Angkor Wat. The spiritual meaning of Gopuram is, when it's into two forms, is Gava plus Puram, where it actually means that this is where all the energy of the inner being exists. In recent times, we have Murdeshwar, where you see on the screen, which has incorporated this ancient temple architecture, blending it with modern technology, which I believe has a lift inside. So this is one of the tallest gopurams of 20 stories, 249 feet, a true skyscraper built in the old way. So basically, it's a beacon for devotees to come to the temple and allow them to pray and meditate in preparation. Here we have another example of fenestration that included beautifully carved stone and wooden pillars. This gave the needed strength with a sense of Indian architecture with its age-old wisdom. The pillared entrances formed open-air meeting places, and the natural stone facades also were very beautifully carved. This was an important part of the social interaction in those days. Then we have the stunning Kopeshwar Mandir in Khidrapur, which is very close to where I live in Kolhapur, so it's very special to me. So this is like a stunning skylight, and it's a Chalukyan masterpiece from most probably the 9th century. So when you step inside the temple, there's this skylight which is open to all the elements, and you can actually feel the early morning rays of the sun, and very appropriately known as the Swarga Mandap. The skylight is supported by 48 carved pillars, and I'm sure now architects use skylights extensively to allow light as a major part of fenestration from the ceilings. So this one is from the 9th century. Then we have the famous jharokas in sandstone, which are one of the most beautiful fenestration forms we can find in Indian architecture. And these were a part of the social concept where women were in parda, and they were often had to be inside their houses. So this was where they overlooked the street or the market or the court, and it afforded them the privacy without being seen. This is one of the most important fenestrations we have of medieval architecture. And it was a beautiful way of achieving numerous purposes like ventilation and screening of the heat of the Indian summers. Again, this is another beautiful example of pure sandstone paneling. And according to Claude Batley, in his famous book, Indian Architecture, where my father, who was an architect, worked under his firm, Claude Batley and King, he says that fenestrations in the external walls often corresponded to the internal niches and arches. And as they multiplied and increased in numbers, it created a pattern and a richness, creating a very beautiful complexity inside the building too. And as an interior designer, for me, the inside matters as much as the outside, because that's where humans actually live. So the inside also has to have that magic. Here we have the Gwalior Fort, and so this fort is something that evokes poetry. And one would think that looking at the purpose of the building, it should have been a very stark and uninteresting exterior. And but then it shows here that the architects shouldn't be dictated by certain concepts, and this defies all design sensibilities. It's decorated with the fenestration is decorated with carved arches, small openings, and clad with exquisite blue, green, and yellow ceramic tiles. So it's this element of surprise that is so refreshing in design, and I think one has to create that magic while designing. Then we have the Bahmani kingdom, Hasan Gangu's kingdom in Bidar, Gulbarga, and Bijapur, where I've been researching for my family. They've been associated with that kingdom. So I was surprised to find that there's such a richness of architecture, where they had the Persian, I think that's the Gwalior Fort. After this, the next slide. It's not coming. So this is the Ashtur tombs of the Bahmani kingdom sultans, and these are a series of 3 stories of arched pointed niches, which are faced with these tiles and very strong Persian influence, with probably Persian architects and craftsmen with painted domes. And I believe they have a calligraphic tomb containing Sufi texts. Imagine using poetry inscribed in architecture. What imagination. Then, of course, we have the famous, iconic Hawa Mahal designed by Lal Chand Ustad. Its 5-floor exterior is like a honeycomb with 953 small windows called the Jharokas, decorated with lattice work and colored glass, letting cool air pass through while getting the women to get their privacy to look out. It's a beautiful example of Rajasthan, Rajputana architecture. Then we have the Maratha architecture, where Sarfoji too was supposedly one of the Maratha rulers who took keen interest in buildings and architecture. So the Tanjore style of architecture was a fusion of diverse styles from Islamic, Hindu, and even I believe European. So here you see the arches in the form of fenestration surrounding the bell tower. Then, of course, we have our own Kolhapur Palace. It's a fine example of Indo-Sasanic architecture with I think Charles Mant used the facades of natural stone. And this was the official architecture of the Raj, where they had their famous portfolio called the Jaipur portfolio. So it's a beautiful synthesis of Hindu, Islamic, and Western adornments. Indian in appearance, but Western in function. And the facades had jharokas, turrets. Mayo College and Baroda Palace are some of the splendid examples. We have a facade that is fenestration, which is using all elements of different architecture schools. This is Madhavagh, which I helped restore. This is a 120-year-old Indo-Sasanic mansion in Baroda. Again, here you see Rajasthani Jharoka balconies competing with turrets and Gothic windows. So it's a fusion of all kinds of fantasy that an architect might have. And I think during that time, Bhai Ram Singh was one of the famous Indo-Sasanic architects who was initially a carpenter. Coming to modern times, where I'm highly, I absolutely admire the work of this American architect called Bill Bensley, who has incorporated some of our beautiful inlay work, perforations, and he uses them in a very modern way, using modern sensibilities, but he's using a lot of our Indian motifs and arts and crafts. So it's a delight to see. This is the Leela Palace in Udaipur. And we have one more of his designs. So I hope that this will inspire the younger architects to look into our richness of our treasure of motifs and architecture styles and blend it with the modern fenestration, the material available, and create something that is unique to India, not just a part of, the Western world where every building is, we don't want to go to a city and say, okay, this could be anywhere in the world. So I hope that this will, they'll go back to history and try and work new ways of incorporating it into their design. And finally, I end my presentation with one of my father's and my favorite architect, Geoffrey Bawa. As he says, I have always enjoyed seeing buildings, but seldom enjoyed reading explanations about them, as I feel with others that architecture cannot be explained, but must be experienced. Thank you so much.